Hey, Girl Gig listeners. We really wanted to be transparent with the topic that we're talking about today so there were no surprises and just really be transparent about all the topics that are going on in this episode.
Yeah, Celeste and I thought it was really important for our October guest to be centered around mental health. October 10th is World Mental Health Day. And so we're welcoming in the San Francisco Giants sports psychologist, Dr. Shana Alexander. And again, we just wanted to make sure you were aware that the topics in this episode are heavy and deep, but we believe very important. Thanks for watching. Welcome in, everybody, to episode 7. We're getting there, Celeste, of Girl,
Woo!
How'd You Get That Gig? I'm Amy G.
And I'm Celeste Gehring. And Amy, I am so excited for this episode. Not only do we have an accomplished guest, but we are talking about such an important topic in sports and beyond, and that is mental health.
I know it kind of bums me out that it's taken this long to have mental health be a discussion in the mainstream. So I am just absolutely thrilled to welcome into our podcast Dr. Shana Alexander. She's a sports psychologist and the director of mental health and wellness and EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program for the San Francisco Giants. So I know her pretty well. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to really dive into this topic about what you do and how impactful it is. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be a great discussion. So, Dr. Alexander, though, we're going to start off really rapidly with a game we love to call Girl Gig Quick Pick, where we get to know you just a little bit better. And because you're calling Northern California your home, we got some Cali questions ready for you. So, are you ready to play?
Put your Cali hat on.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, okay.
Now you're really testing
Here we
me.
go.
California.
I promise you'll pass. I promise.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Okay. You're a doctor. You're going to be fine. Okay, first question. So obviously we've got it all in California, but are you a beach, snow, or desert person?
Oh, you know what? I think I'm a beach person as long as I don't have to get too sandy.
It's always a problem. It looks so great from afar.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And in honor of Oracle Park, are you the bacon wrapped hot dog, garlic fries, or Ghirardelli Sunday girl?
Oh, I gotta go with the Sunday for sure.
Good pick.
Right.
Me too.
Okay, exercise. What would you choose? Jog, power walk, hike, yoga, or an exercise class, like a HIIT class?
I'm pretty active and love them all, but I would say probably the quick and easy jog.
Okay. I mean, I would avoid that like for my life.
Me too.
Jogging's not my jam.
That's funny.
What is your favorite thing to do in Northern California on your day off?
So I actually live in Folsom and it's a really cute little town. And I love to get out and walk. So we're connected to a lot of bike trails here in historic Folsom. I live really close to it. And so I love to get out, look at the water, just watch some of the wildlife and be a part of the nature.
I can attest to that. One of my best friends lives in historic Folsom, and I love the little town. It's so quaint and
Yep.
great trails. Okay, wine country, Napa or Sonoma? Big choice here.
Oh, I would say Napa.
It's closer to you.
Mhm.
We're almost done.
And the last question, California being the home of parks, is it Disneyland, Universal Studios, Six Flags, or SeaWorld?
Oh, I would have to say Disneyland. We go pretty regularly.
It's the
Nice.
best. It's the happiest place on earth, not at all for like all the families there. I know you must have like just like a plethora of potential clients when you go.
Right?
I know. So can we have one more question, Celeste?
Of course.
Because I gotta ask. I just gotta ask. Okay. Hypothetically, right? Because we actually don't want this to happen at all. An LA-based team will win a championship. Which team do you dislike the least? The Kings, the Rams, the Chargers, the Lakers, Clippers, Angels, or Dodgers? Dodgers. I hope you don't.
The team that I dislike the least.
The least, because we know you dislike them all because you're a Northern California gal.
Right? I would have to say the Lakers.
Okay. There, yeah. And if you're watching Winning Time, everybody's gonna be fun. Okay, you did really well. You passed. I mean, with flying colors, great job. But we love that game because it just gets people watching a little chance to know a little bit about you and what you prefer and what you're like and your makeup. With that all, let's get down and dirty into your actual position with the Giants. And how would you describe kind of your daily duties?
Yeah, so my job looks different depending on if the team's in town versus if they're on the road. So let's say the team's in town. I'm at every home game. I have an office down by the clubhouse in the tunnel, which is really a great space that I've created. It's kind of like a little Zen den. So guys like to just go in there and hang out because it doesn't even feel like you're at the stadium. I think the reality is in this industry, these guys don't have a lot of space. And so a quiet office that doesn't feel like the stadium is really inviting to them. And so I come in very early to the stadium, have a medical meeting with the medical team. We talk about the players and injuries and what the day's going to look like. And then I usually have something to eat. And then I'll have sessions booked with players or staff. And so that may be they come to my office and we chat. We may actually walk around the stadium out on the field, or we may find somewhere else to chat. And then typically I like to keep a little window open for batting practice so I can go out on the field and just get some sun and be social with everybody. Because a lot of my job is just building relationships. And then sometimes right before the game, someone wants to chat again. And then usually during the game, I have some downtime until I help out with making some shakes with the nutritionist at the very end of the game. Every once in a while, though, I have maybe a starting pitcher who is not playing, who has free time, or maybe a player who's going through rehab who has some free time and wants to meet during the game, because that's kind of a nice time for them to meet as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you don't just tend to the Giants players because I see you in Sacramento with the AAA players.
Yes.
So what is that part like when the team's on the road? What are you doing?
So when the team's on the road, I typically don't travel with the team. Occasionally I will, but usually I get to come home to Folsom and then I'll go in and help out with the River Cats, our AAA team. And it actually works really well because anyone who knows baseball knows there's a ton of movement up and down. And so what happens is I go in and I help out with the River Cats, and then typically I'll see several of those guys in San Francisco. So it's kind of nice that they can see me in both places in person. And so very similar in Sacramento, I go in early, I hang out with the guys, I have sessions booked. And then in Sacramento, it's a little bit different. I'll go into the dugout usually during the games. And when I can and feel up for it, I'll stay the whole entire game. They hassle me a little bit when I leave early. So, and I don't blame them. Right?
Yeah.
And how did you get your relationship in sports? Were you a player? Were you a fan growing up? What was your childhood like and your relationship with sports?
Yeah, that's a great question. I came from a sports-oriented family. So basically, sports was a big deal in our family. My dad was kind of the driving force in that. And we're actually originally from Kansas, so we followed all of Kansas sports. And I played all different types of sports growing up, and I have two older brothers, and they did the same. And so I always just kind of admired the dedication and passion that went into being an athlete. They train so much. They really, their whole life is committed to being this athlete. And so I just have a lot of admiration for athletes in general. And I, from a very young age, had an interest in psychology. And so in high school, I took a psychology class and we had to do a study, and which was funny because I was playing soccer and I was jogging a lot and I would run on our like country road. And I did my own study by waving at people and seeing who would wave back. What time of day was it? Was it male or female? What type of vehicle? All these sorts of things. And did it play a factor? And so I started getting really curious about human behavior. And that led me to want to be a psychologist. I wasn't really sure what that would look like. I went into research psychology initially and then decided, nope, sports is my thing. I really am connected to sports and athletes. And so then I went on to graduate school and specialized in clinical psychology with an emphasis in sports and health psychology. And so all along during my internships, my very first internship was actually at a local high school baseball team where a sports psychologist supervised me and I got to work with high school baseball players. And so that's where it kind of started, my interest in working with athletes.
I didn't realize that you did your undergrad at UC Davis.
Mhm.
I did too. So
Oh, you
also
did
Aggie.
too. I
Yes,
love
I didn't
that. I
know
did
that.
not know
Until I
that. How
read.
cool.
I know. I can't believe I missed that.
Mhm.
But will you share a little bit about the path of school? We really want this podcast to be a resource. So if there's a young girl, a young boy that watches this and they're like, I have an interest in human behavior and I love sports and I think I want to do this too.
Mhm.
What is full transparency about school? Because I know it's a lot.
Yes. So I honestly, so I get this question a lot. I have a lot of students who want to interview me. How did I get where I am? Right? There are a lot of people are interested. And I say I wouldn't necessarily recommend my path. It was
I
a
say that
very,
too about
yes,
I do.
it was, and not that it's a bad path, it was just very lengthy and expensive. And it's a huge commitment, right? And so I don't always say, hey, this is what you should do, because there's other ways to do the same thing. My path looked like I did undergraduate. I got my bachelor's degree at UC Davis in psychology. Yep. And then I went on to a psychology school called Argosy in the Bay Area and got my master's and doctorate there. It's a doctor of psychology. It's referred to as a PsyD. And that was an extra 4 years. So most people take a little bit longer, but I took summer school. I don't know why. I was just so motivated to like move through school. So I finished it all as quickly as possible. And then after that, you think, okay, I just went to 8 years of college. I should be good, right? No. Um, then you do 1 year pre-doc internship. So I had to go to Southern California. You apply like to all these different places to get accepted. I did a pre-doc internship, and then after that, you do a post-doc internship. And so you have to have all these supervised hours of a licensed psychologist overseeing your work before you're actually able to practice on your own. So I did 2 years full-time internship being supervised. After you complete that, then you can sit for your licensure exams. And those are big exams. The first one is a national exam, and usually people study for about 6 months. And that is your first initial licensure. And then you have to sit for your state exam. So you're licensed in each state. And so whichever state you're working in. And then you sit for your state exam. And that's a very long, long haul. So that was my path. It got me where I am today, and I'm grateful for that. Knowing what I know now, I think if somebody said, hey, how do I become a sports psychologist? I would narrow that path and probably just get a master's. You can't be a psychologist, but you can still work in sports and do mental health. So you can be a mental health worker with a master's degree.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And there's specific programs now that are just for sports psychology.
If you moved out of state, would you have to retake the test?
So I would have to take the state exam, not the national exam. So every state. Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
okay. Wow. When I played basketball for LSU, I would have died to have somebody like you to be able to talk to. And especially there's so much anxiety that athletes face, right? Like we face so much pressure to perform. I played hoops. And just really seeing the teams take off with mental health and there just being such an emphasis on mental health. Why do you think it's taken so much time to kind of come to the forefront or taken so much time to talk about? And what was that accelerator where I feel like now it's okay to talk about it, especially for men?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's taken a lot of time because there's a lot of stigma around it. And I think specifically in sports, we often see this kind of masculine stereotype around it where you just kind of want to be tough and push through, right? I can speak specifically for the Giants, what changed for us, because honestly, I think the Giants are really leading the way when it comes to mental health, and we've made a huge impact on sports in general in mental health. And I'm so thankful for that. Unfortunately, it took a pretty tragic story and tons of work to get there, but I'm so thankful for how it's turned out. So Amy, you know very well Drew Robinson. My very first year with the Giants, Drew Robinson attempted suicide. And it was pretty scary and devastating for everybody. I remember having to have a call with all of the players and break the news to the team. Thankfully, he lived. It was a very violent attempt, but he lived. And he actually came back and he played at our AAA level. And I've shared this story so many times because this was really kind of the turning point that opened my eyes as to why Drew was such an impact for all of us. I went to Sacramento when he was a player, and about 8 players came up to me and said, "Can I talk?" And I thought, oh man, something's going on in Sacramento right now. Once I sat down individually with these guys, they would say, well, Drew talks to you. And he told me to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, get out of town. So 2 doctors, Dr. Emily Payette, she's our minor league psychologist, and myself could go and talk to these guys endlessly. And they kind of hear us, you know?
Yeah.
And here and there, yeah, sure, they'll utilize our service. Drew up here, who's lived it, they heard him completely differently. And then that started breaking down the barriers. And Drew being so vulnerable when he came back and talked to the team, it was unbelievable. There were a bunch of guys in tears. And he gets up in front of the guys, and I love it so much. He'll say, hey, tell your buddy you love him. And it's really cute how real and raw he is about it. And I think, if I went up there and said, hey guys, tell each other you love each other, they would be like, get out of here, lady, right? But Drew, Mr. Muscle Man, who's like tough guy, gone through it, right? Shouldn't be here. He says it, and all of a sudden, I see them in Sacramento when he was a player. There was this little thing they would always go, love you, love you. It was super cute. You'd see it back and forth with the players. So they really hurt him and in a significant way, and he's made a huge impact on reducing that stigma. I know that this is a heavy story as I share it. I can see it.
I know. I just, my heart, aches for him. I interviewed him the year after his attempt. I think of his parents and his siblings, and, Drew has shared this story, Celeste, and I think it's so important that he was loved. A lot of times we correlate wanting to take our life that we don't have anything or nobody loves us or we're alone. And that was not his situation. He was very loved and very accomplished. And that's the power of depression and anxiety, and to not give it to really give it its full power in how it can control us, and how we look at other illnesses as more important or more real than mental health crushes me. And I know Shana's a mother of a 9-year-old. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. I mean, we're in the heart of it. If they're down, I'm like, good. Because telling them you love them and letting them know you're there isn't always enough.
Right.
And I do believe he has said that this was his purpose, to be where he is and to be this advocate for mental health and help bring the conversation to the forefront and remove the embarrassment or the stigma around it. And I'm just so grateful for you too, Shana, that you're part of this movement, and people gravitate towards you, and you're doing what you should do too. And you and Drew are such a great team, and you're doing the stuff that matters. So
Thank you.
it's such a touching story, and he's an absolute doll. Kind of can't think of life without him.
I know it's pretty mind-boggling to imagine him not being here, because the impact he's had is unreal. And Amy, you say he was loved, but he was also successful.
Very.
And so every year the Phillies ask Drew and I to come and do a joint mental health talk with them when we go to play the Phillies. And this last one was probably the most impactful talk we've ever given. So Drew and I give a lot of public talks because we just want to reach out to the community and let them hear this message, right? It makes a big difference. So I'll share this and then go into the Phillies. Sorry. I feel like I'm taking my own road here. Anyways,
this is your show.
Yes. We got asked to speak at several different high schools, Drew and I, a few months back, and we went and spoke at these high schools. We had a PowerPoint presentation. It was really amazing. Drew does a great job sharing his story and is very vulnerable and real. Afterwards, A few days later, the person who organized the event contacted us and said, "Thank you so much for doing that." One of the students had a plan to end her life over the weekend. And instead of following through on that plan after she heard you speak, she asked the guidance counselor for help and is now getting the mental health treatment she needs. And that just made me pause a little bit, because I remember that day, because we were doing the River Cats and presenting at high schools. And I was a little bit grumpy because it was like a very intense day. We did 3 presentations and then went into the stadium. And I thought, wow, could you imagine if that high school girl would have died by suicide that weekend? How horrible that would have been for the family, for the community, for the school, for everyone, right? And so what we're doing, I think, really is making a difference. The talk we did in Philly recently, I just wanted to talk about this. It's called Strike Out the Stigma. They do it, I think, every couple months in Philly. And Drew and I have done it the past 2 years when we've played them. It's pretty amazing, the talk we gave. The audience had quite a few parents who had lost a child to suicide. And so several of them got up in tears telling the story about their daughter or son who had died and how they missed it and they just felt terrible. And there's this really powerful clip that I'll share with you all at some point of me just feeling pulled to say this. And I said to them, as a mental health professional, around 11 years into my career, Drew was very open about this, that I was his therapist at the time. At the time that he attempted suicide, I was working with him, and my initial thought was, what did I miss? And I said, you need to tell me. It's going to make me a better provider. Hopefully I can help somebody moving forward. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I just need to know for me so that I can change this. And he said, absolutely nothing. Not even the closest people in my life had any sort of indication that this was coming. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I like that response, because I wanted to hear something I could do differently. The reality is risk is so difficult to predict, even for somebody who's been working in the mental health field for this long with a doctorate degree. I still missed it. And those parents just started bawling in the audience and came up to me afterwards and hugged me and said, we needed to hear that because we thought we missed it. We thought we did something wrong.
Of course, you think that as a parent.
I said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know. And this is why it's so important for people to know that there's help out there and we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It's a tough one. With that though, let's talk a little bit about, what you address, because Drew is this example of what we saw as successful. But I think he would say, and that's what I've interpreted, and then many times I've interviewed him, was this up and down situation in baseball in particular. Other sports like NFL has like a practice squad, and the NBA has, the Warriors have a G League, but baseball's very unique in how many times you can get moved up and down, and how you can actually be successful at the big league level and still get optioned to AAA. And then it's in their head. Like, was I not good enough? So what are the things you have to address? Because from the general public's point of view, anybody who's made it to the show is successful, even if it's one game. But you're dealing with a much different mindset with these athletes. Like, what are the things that that you can share with us that you're having to address?
Right. So I think you're exactly right. People think it's kind of glamorous. They've made their dreams come true, right? How could they ever be down about this? Unfortunately, it's a ton of stress and pressure, and it's a tough place to be in. And one of the main things that I look at is self-talk. What are they telling themselves on a regular basis? Because a lot of these guys are perfectionistic, and they're really hard on themselves. And so I think just being able to step back and say, well, what would other people think of you? Would other people say you've been successful? Like, how would other people define your career? And because they all have their kind of individual goals they've set for themselves, and they're very hard on themselves if they don't reach those goals. But they need to be able to step back and look at the big picture and say, okay, no, I actually have been successful, and be a little kinder to themselves, because that self-talk makes a big difference. And unfortunately, Drew is very open about that. He talked about just a lot of self-hate and would get really down on himself at times. And so that's one of the main things we talk about. The other thing is just about stress and anxiety in general. And so how to manage some stress and pressure, just healthy habits across the board. And that usually is off the field before we approach on the field techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you go about building that trust? Because obviously he talked to you and chose to talk to you, and you have all these players that, you know, they're going up and down, like Amy said, they have this high performance anxiety. How do you get them to trust you?
Yeah.
Especially as
So
a
I think,
woman too, like being female.
Yeah, right.
Like,
right. You know, what's interesting is I think the female thing is somewhat of an advantage for me because research suggests most people prefer a female provider when it comes to mental health, just in general. Maybe it's just maybe feels a little bit safer to be vulnerable. I'm not totally sure. So I think that is one thing that is an advantage for me. How do I get them to trust? Some of them still won't open up. It's taken a lot of time and just being around. So the approach the Giants have taken is just having me integrated with the team. So I'm there. I'm in the lunchroom. I'm out on the field. I'm all over the place. So you just see me around all the time. They get to know me. We laugh and joke a lot. And then I'll just approach them at times and say, "Hey, how are you?" And sometimes they'll be a little bit more real. You know, if they're not willing to have a real session, it might just be in the dugout. They're having a tough game and they'll want to say something. Or sometimes you'll see them even come up and sit next to me and want to start chatting in the dugout, which is interesting to see. So it's taken a lot of time to build trust with these guys. And then it's also word of mouth. So once one person has worked with you and had some success, they'll tell each other. And that's been really helpful within baseball.
it's kind of, it's not that different than Celeste being the in-game reporter. Like I had to keep the same hours. I had to show them I was willing to be there as long as they were, get there when they got their leave after they left, and then just be around. Because
Yep.
when you see a reporter coming at you, you know, they're like, oh God, what does she want?
Right.
And it
Keep
took
things off the record. Yeah.
yeah. And just to how I would do that too, Dr. Alexander, I would just kind of sit in the dugout. And then if somebody approached me and I would just ask how their family was. I didn't need anything from them for that game. But then if I did need something from them later on, I could go, and that part's different, but
Mhm.
that's also, I don't know if that's universal to sports and being able to be integrated, because baseball is so long and you know you're there every single day. I think it's imperative that they see you're willing to do the grind with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So go ahead. Go ahead, Celeste.
Well, I was going to say, you know, this conversation reminds me so much too of Ted Lasso. You know, I felt like when I was watching Ted Lasso, this was the first show that I can remember where we were actually seeing real problems being dealt with mental health, right? We weren't seeing someone laying on a sofa, or we weren't seeing the kind of stigma kind of things going on in a show. What were your views of Ted Lasso? How do you see that show? Do you feel like it helped push things forward at all? Or what do you think about it?
I feel really kind of silly saying this. I have not seen it. So everybody, I'm telling you, like everyone says, you got to do it. You got to do it.
You do.
The reality is my schedule is insane. And
Yeah.
being a mom, I just haven't had the time to do it. It's definitely on my to-do list. Because everyone says, "Oh my gosh, you're Ted Lasso." And I have not seen it, unfortunately. But I think it's really cool that we're getting the word out there that these sorts of positions exist, right? And they can be helpful, is my hope, is how the show portrays it.
Hands down, it's the best show I've ever watched. The best show. And I was just so proud, you know, when they brought mental health into the storyline with the lead character, right? Because he was kind of like this, you know, isn't he from Kansas too? Like, I think he's from Kansas.
How
And he
funny.
loves his
I remember
barbecue
that.
and he talks
It
like
might be. Yeah, he
I
might
think he's from
be.
Kansas. And so you never even saw it coming, which is exactly what mental health is, right? It can happen. And one thing
Absolutely.
I never understand, this is total tangent, right? Is like, I mentioned it earlier, why we're so accepting of if somebody gets a diagnosis of cancer or Parkinson's or something very tangible, but we can't understand a diagnosis of depression or high anxiety or anxiousness. I don't panic attacks. Like,
Mhm.
I still don't get why people can't see that as a real issue. But anyway, that's me going off on a tangent. Maybe talking about it like this will help people realize, like, you can be
Right.
55 years old and all of a sudden you have depression. Like it just
Right.
comes out of nowhere.
And it is a medical condition. And so that's what we're really trying to talk about it. Like, and I love Drew's approach to say, like, let's brag about therapy. Let's view it as like I go to the gym. And then also like utilize this service like you do the training room. This is just as important as your physical health when it comes to sports. And so I really like that. But yes, it's a medical condition and sometimes it needs to be treated with medication. And people need to understand that it's not that people are being weak or faking, it's real. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, most people will experience some time in their life where they're going to struggle with some sort of mental health struggles.
And in saying, go ahead, Eve.
Well, I was just gonna say we're talking about some really serious stuff, especially Drew's story. But do you have other things that you address, like if a player's family is struggling moving to a new place,
Yeah.
or schools, or there are a lot of other things that happen, especially in baseball. What are some of the other things, if somebody would be interested in being a sports psychologist, that you're dealing with besides like the super heavy stuff?
Yeah. So I address everything that I would in the general population. So I think what's important is, I gave a presentation at this elementary school like a month ago, and I told these little kids, these guys are like big superstars on TV, but what's really interesting about them is they're just like you and me. They have the same concerns and worries and life experiences that all of us have, right?
And
And so what
sometimes
that
they act just like you, like in elementary school.
100%, right?
I can say
So,
that. I'll say
yeah,
that for you.
right. um, so it's totally across the board, different issues that I deal with. So, unfortunately, sometimes there'll be grief or loss that they experience during the season, and that's really hard. Another big stressor for our guys is when a child is born, maybe becoming a new dad or adding another child, because they don't get a lot of time. They get like maybe 3 days, I think it is.
You hope the baby's born on the first day, so you get 2 days.
It's really intense. And so I also help out with the wives. I have a certification in perinatal mood disorder, so during and after pregnancies. And I educate our players, hey, just so you know, I have this certification. And if you notice any sort of changes with your wife or your significant other, please let me know because I'd be happy to chat with that person about it. And so a lot of the guys have said, hey, would you mind reaching out to her? And it's pretty cute that they'll pause and they kind of hear me differently when I say this because they're like, oh, okay. And then there's been several that have circled back and asked for that.
Yeah.
So really kind of a variety of different things, sleep struggles, flight anxieties,
Yeah.
Low mood. It's quite interesting that we see more flight anxiety than I ever would have thought. These guys fly all the time, right? So I thought they are like easy peasy. I personally
Sleep all the
think
time.
that what did you
Like
say?
they fall
Sorry.
asleep everywhere all the time because they've traveled so much.
Right. So there's actually quite a few guys who struggle with flight anxiety. And my personal assessment, and I could be off on this, is that's a safe place for them to express their anxiety or vulnerability. Instead of saying like I'm worried about life or this or that, ooh, I'm worried this plane could crash.
Right.
That feels like
More
a safe
acceptable.
place. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing that is one of the things I address as well. And then of course, substance use or abuse, relationship difficulties, all sorts of things.
Branches out, like all kinds of different things which
Yeah.
keeps you on your toes.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. You never know what is coming your way, that's for sure.
And with everything you've seen, can you tell us like where have we been with mental health? Where are we now? And where do we need to go with it all?
Yeah. So I think in the past, mental health in sports and in general population maybe was more accepting than in sports. So in the past, it was very limited. So in the past, we had more just people who were focused on mental performance versus mental health. And so it was all about let's improve your performance. My personal belief is we're not going to improve your performance on the field until we address the root of the problem. And typically there's some mental health stuff around that, right? And so I think we're starting to recognize that athletes struggle just as much as general population, or maybe even more so based on the pressure that they have. So now we're seeing many more teams kind of want to replicate what we're doing, bringing in mental health. So many super famous athletes now are talking out, speaking up about their own mental health struggles, taking some time off, personal time. Where are we going? So this season, we actually, we were the first ever team to wear the 988 Suicide Crisis Life armbands. So there's a lifeline, and they've added a new text line, the 988 text line. So if somebody is having a mental health crisis or really struggling, you can just text 988 and you'll get connected with a provider to help you. We were the first team to wear these armbands at all of our affiliates and in the major leagues. And we're approaching Major League Baseball to dedicate a day for all of the teams to wear it next year. So I think we're making a lot of progress, which is really cool. We do mental health shirts every year with different slogans on them. Our guys wear them all throughout. They wear them during press conferences and everything. And we're so proud of it. And it's neat because other teams, not even just in baseball, are reaching out to me saying, hey, what are you guys doing? And can you tell us about it? And so they're recognizing what the Giants are doing and they're wanting to replicate it.
So it's just kind of, a domino effect. Yeah.
Right.
Ripple effect, which is perfect. So I know we're running out of time. I do want to ask you about when I started covering the Giants in 2008, they didn't have this position. Like every team had a medical doctor, like a GP of sorts, or orthopedic surgeon, something like that. So in my world, in my career, having a psychologist on staff is fairly new. We're a couple years in with the Giants. What are you seeing regarding job opportunities? So if somebody really wants to go down this path, are the opportunities increasing? And what would your advice be for them to start knocking on doors? Where should they start?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think the jobs are still limited. My hope is now we're going to see it more with every single sports team, which will open it up more, every single professional team. A great place to start is at university settings. So all university counseling centers have a bunch of psychologists, and they have usually a sports psychology program as well. And that's an amazing place to get your foot in the door, get some experience, get some training. Any sort of university will have that opportunity. So if you have the education and you're looking for an internship, that's where you would want to connect and apply there.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alexander, for joining us. You're doing amazing work. We love that it's being recognized, and you're making such a big difference in the world. So thank you for being such an amazing guest and joining us. And Amy G, next month in November, we have another inspiring guest.
I know.
And you're kind of a fangirl, so I'll let you do the honors on this one.
I know. I am. I'm a fangirl of our next guest, but I just want to wrap up really fast with Dr. Alexander because I'm a fan of you. And I really am. And I remember the first time I saw you out on the field and you came up and you introduced yourself. And of all the jobs out there in sports, I just, the impact that you make and have matters. And I think we're all looking for that in what we do, that we have some type of legacy or we made a difference. And I'm just really proud to know you and to work with you. I'm so glad you did the show. I just know it's important information to get out there, and however we can help, as you know, I'm always on board. So I'm just proud to know you. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you both so much. That totally brought tears to my eyes. It's really sweet that you say that, because when I started with the Giants, I had heard so much about you and all I wanted to do was connect with you. And so that's so funny that we've made
a lot of work on me. Do I need
No.
Like I can help that girl.
I just think you're such a powerhouse, and it's so amazing to see women doing these sorts of things. And I love to be able to connect with really powerful, influential women. And both of you guys are doing an amazing job spreading the word, helping out other women in all sorts of careers. So thank you.
Thank you. We're trying. All right, Dr.
Pretty
Alex,
cool.
I'm gonna let you go because I bet there's a lineup of players you, and we've taken an hour of your time. Sorry, guys. Sorry. But thank you so much to Dr. Alexander. You're amazing. And as Celeste said, yes, I'm a very big fangirl of our next guest. I don't even know if fangirl does it justice. So this is her title. Okay. Reporter and analyst for ESPN. I have to read it. Turner Sports, NBC. And she's the former captain of the U.S. women's national team. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and a 2-time World Cup champion. And I'm talking about Julie Foudy. Oh, I can hear the cheers. I'm not even sure what to do. Like, I get chills. I can't believe she agreed to do the show, although I should believe it, but I'm like, what? You said yes? Okay. So Julie Foudy is going to be in the house. And for all you youngsters out there, go look her up. Anybody our age is like, Julie Foudy, right?
Mhm.
But she's, talk about a powerhouse. I can't wait.
I know. Well, that does it for us. For Amy G, I'm Celeste Gehring. Please listen to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Our handle is at Girl Gig Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Subscribe.